September 11, 2001, a morning that would forever change the world. While the nation watched in horror as planes struck the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, one flight carried passengers who would refuse to be victims. Ordinary people, faced with unimaginable terror, made an extraordinary choice to fight back. This is the story of Flight 93, the passengers who turned fear into courage, planning into action, and ordinary lives into a legacy of heroism. What happened on this flight would save countless lives and become one of the most remarkable acts of bravery in modern history. This is their untold story. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any stories of courage and history that inspire. The morning of September 11th, 2001 began like any other, a day that carried no warning of the tragedy it would bring. Across the United States, millions of people woke up with the ordinary routines of a Tuesday morning. Some hurried through breakfast as they prepared for work. Others took their children to school. Some rushed to catch early flights. And some, without knowing it, were stepping into history. For the passengers and crew of United Airlines Flight 93, September 11th began with the familiarity of routine. It was supposed to be a normal flight, one of thousands happening that day. But by the end of the morning, it would become something else entirely. A symbol of courage, sacrifice, and unexpected heroism. The story of Flight 93 begins even before the passengers boarded the aircraft. It begins with the atmosphere of the country at that time. In 2001, air travel was common, secure, and built on trust. The idea of a coordinated hijacking on American soil seemed impossible, even unimaginable. The security procedures of that era were based on the assumption that hijackers wanted to negotiate, not destroy. No one foresaw what would happen that day. Certainly not the everyday people who got up that morning and made their way to Newark International Airport, expecting nothing more than a routine flight to San Francisco. For the passengers, the day started with simple actions: packing bags, grabbing coffee, calling loved ones, double-checking tickets. For the crew members, it started with briefings and preparation. Pilots Donald Green and First Officer Leroy Homer Jr. had no reason to believe this flight would be any different from the countless others they had flown. The flight attendants, including Sandra Bradshaw, Wanda Green, Deborah Welsh, and Lorraine Bay, were trained, experienced, and ready to serve passengers on a long transcontinental journey. Some passengers were business travelers. Some were returning home. Some were heading off to important meetings. There were parents, sons, daughters, friends, colleagues. There were people from different backgrounds, different professions, and different stories. But on that morning, they were all united by a single destination: San Francisco to the same time, thousands of miles away. For men with a plan of destruction began their own preparations. These men were not ordinary travelers. They were trained operatives of Al-Qaeda, each with a specific role and a specific mission. They had spent months preparing for this day. They had blended into American society, learned its customs, observed its routines. Their actions on the morning of September 11th were deliberate and precise. Their journey to the airport was not routine. It was the final step in an operation they believed would change the world. Flight 93 was scheduled to depart at 8 a.m. But like many flights that morning, it encountered minor delays. The boarding process took longer than expected. Passengers found their seats, stowed their luggage, and settled in for a long flight. The delay may have seemed like an inconvenience at the time, but it would eventually play a critical role in the events that unfolded later. At 8:42 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 finally lifted off from Newark, climbing into clear skies. The passengers settled into their routines, reading newspapers, listening to music, preparing for work. The crew began their service. Everything appeared normal, calm, peaceful, but unknown to those on board. Chaos had already begun elsewhere. At 8:46 a.m., just 4 minutes after Flight 93 was airborne, American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The impact was devastating. News began to spread quickly, but at 30,000 feet, the passengers and crew of Flight 93 remained unaware. They were enclosed in their own world, following the normal rhythm of a morning flight. There were no signs of distress, no unusual messages, no alerts from air traffic controllers about the unfolding tragedy. Then at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower. The world was now watching in horror. Television networks interrupted programming to show live images of a burning New York skyline. People across the country were glued to their screens, confused and terrified. But Flight 93 was still in the air, flying westward, disconnected from the unfolding catastrophe. The passengers remained unaware of the magnitude of the events happening on the ground. They sat in their seats, reading, sleeping, or talking quietly among themselves. The crew continued its service. The pilots were focused on navigating the aircraft. The cockpit was calm. None of them knew that the world below them had changed. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. By now, it was clear that the United States was under attack. But again, none of this information had reached Flight 93. The aircraft was flying beyond the reach of ground-based radio announcements. The flight crew had not been alerted. The passengers had not received any unusual notifications. But at 9:28 a.m., something happened that shattered the calm inside Flight 93. The cockpit voice recorder captured sounds of a struggle, loud shouts, crashing noises, and the unmistakable chaos of an attack. The hijackers made their move. Passengers heard screaming. The plane abruptly dropped in altitude, shaking violently as the hijackers forced their way into the cockpit. Panic spread throughout the cabin. Some passengers cried. Some shouted. Some froze in shock. Within seconds, Flight 93 had transformed from an ordinary commercial flight into a battleground. The hijackers took control, pushing the aircraft into an erratic flight path. They issued instructions in Arabic. They threatened passengers with weapons. They declared they had a bomb. The atmosphere inside the aircraft was filled with terror, confusion, and disbelief. Many passengers prayed. Others tried to comfort one another. Some sat in stunned silence, trying to process what was happening. But in the midst of this chaos, a few passengers began to think clearly. They realized this was no ordinary hijacking. Something was different. Something was wrong. Hijackers typically redirected planes to negotiate demands, often landing them in foreign countries. But this was not a negotiation. These men were not interested in bargaining. Their actions made it clear that they had a different, far more destructive plan. As the minutes passed, some passengers began making phone calls. They contacted loved ones. They called emergency numbers. They reached out to anyone who could provide answers. And through those calls, the horrifying truth emerged. The World Trade Center had been attacked. The Pentagon had been attacked. And it was likely that Flight 93 was part of this coordinated attack. The realization struck hard. The passengers understood something that many planes attacked earlier that morning had not fully grasped. Their plane was being used as a weapon. Their lives were in danger. And so were the lives of countless innocent people on the ground. This realization would change everything. It would ignite a sense of purpose, courage, and unity among people who had been strangers just an hour before. It would transform ordinary passengers into extraordinary heroes. It would shape the final chapter of a story that would be remembered for generations. But that transformation began slowly, quietly, within individual passengers who processed the terrifying truth. Some cried as they spoke to loved ones. Some whispered prayers. Some struggled to understand what they had just heard through the phone lines. And some, with determination growing inside them, began thinking and planning. This is the moment where the story of Flight 93 shifts from tragedy to courage, from shock to resistance, from fear to determination, and this is only the beginning. As the initial shock began to settle in the cabin of Flight 93, passengers started to act with astonishing clarity under unimaginable pressure. The gravity of their situation was becoming evident. They were not just ordinary victims of a hijacking. They were facing a mission of destruction that could kill thousands on the ground. Every second counted. Every decision mattered. The quiet hum of the plane's engines masked the panic and urgency building among the passengers. Yet within that small, confined space, a remarkable transformation was occurring. Ordinary individuals were beginning to think and act as a unified force. Among the passengers were people whose personal stories would soon become part of history. Tom Burnett, a business professional with a family at home, quickly moved to gather information and coordinate efforts. Todd Beamer, a father and husband, exuded calm determination and spoke with a quiet confidence that began to influence those around him. Bingham, a large, athletic man with an imposing presence, was ready to physically confront the hijackers if necessary. Jeremy Glick, a judo enthusiast, was poised to act decisively. Alongside these men, other passengers and crew members quietly assessed their options, determined to resist, yet aware of the overwhelming danger they faced. As they communicated with family members and loved ones, the passengers received the harrowing news of the other attacks. It was through these phone calls that the full scale of the morning's events became clear. They heard, in real time, how 2 towers in New York had been struck, how chaos had engulfed the nation, and how a third plane had crashed into the Pentagon. These revelations ignited in them a profound sense of responsibility. They realized that their flight was not just another statistic. It was part of a deliberate attack on American soil, and its intended target could have been the U.S. Capitol or the White House. Faced with this knowledge, a remarkable decision emerged among the passengers. They resolved that they would not be passive victims. They would take action, knowing full well that the odds of survival were slim. This decision was not made lightly. It was the culmination of courage, resolve, and a shared understanding of the stakes. They began to plan how they might confront the hijackers, secure the cockpit, and prevent the aircraft from reaching its target. Their planning was deliberate and meticulous, given the extreme limitations of their environment. They had few tools, little information, and no formal training. Yet they assessed their options logically. Items such as hot coffee, food carts, and beverage trays became potential weapons. The plane itself, with its narrow aisles and confined space, could be leveraged strategically. Every passenger contributed in some way, whether by providing information, offering moral support, or preparing to physically intervene. The crew's knowledge of the cabin layout and procedures became invaluable in coordinating the emerging counterattack. Meanwhile, the hijackers, unaware of the growing resistance among the passengers, focused on maintaining control of the aircraft. The cockpit was tightly secured, and their threats reinforced a sense of fear among those in the cabin. Yet this very threat, intended to intimidate, spurred the passengers into action. The stark reality of the hijackers' intentions created a sense of urgency that transformed fear into resolve. The passengers understood that hesitation was not an option. Todd Beamer made a critical contribution during this time. While on the phone with a ground operator, he calmly described the situation inside the cabin, providing crucial details about the hijackers' actions and the overall state of the flight. Beamer's composure under pressure became a beacon of leadership. At one point, he prayed with the operator, a moment of spiritual grounding that underscored the gravity of their circumstances. Before ending the call, he uttered the now famous words, "Are you guys ready? Let's roll." These words would become synonymous with courage and defiance in the face of overwhelming adversity. The passengers' planning coalesced into a coordinated effort. They began to quietly position themselves, preparing for the moment when action would be unavoidable. Individuals volunteered for specific roles based on their physical abilities, personal strengths, and willingness to confront danger. The plan was simple yet audacious. Breach the cockpit, overpower the hijackers, and regain control of the aircraft. Every passenger involved understood the extreme risk involved. Survival was unlikely. But their objective was clear: stop the plane, save lives, and prevent further destruction. As the plane continued its flight across Pennsylvania, tension grew in the cabin. The hijackers remained unaware of the passengers' intentions, but maintained a constant presence, their movements designed to assert dominance. The passengers, however, had already moved beyond fear. Their determination was now the driving force behind every calculated action, every whispered word, every resolved glance. They were acting not only to save themselves, but to prevent catastrophe on the ground. The crew members, trained to maintain order during emergencies, played a critical role in the unfolding events. Flight attendants provided guidance and support to passengers, relaying information, coordinating seating arrangements, and assisting those in distress. Their knowledge of the cabin's layout and operations allowed the passengers to organize more effectively, ensuring that everyone had a role in the forthcoming effort. The crew's leadership, calm under pressure, exemplified the resilience and bravery that defined Flight 93. As the minutes passed, the passengers refined their strategy. They decided on a single, unified approach: storm the cockpit together, confront the hijackers directly, and prevent the aircraft from reaching its target. Each individual's willingness to sacrifice personal safety for the greater good underscored the extraordinary nature of their actions. The transformation from ordinary travelers into a coordinated resistance force was complete. The narrative of Flight 93 is remarkable not only for the heroism displayed, but also for the humanity revealed in moments of crisis. Passengers comforted one another, offered words of encouragement, and maintained moral composure despite the imminent danger. Some spoke of their families, leaving messages of love and hope. Others prayed silently or vocalized their faith aloud, drawing strength from their beliefs. In the midst of terror, the passengers displayed profound courage, empathy, and unity. The preparation for confrontation required extraordinary focus. Passengers identified key tactical points, assessed potential obstacles, and mentally rehearsed the steps they would take. Hot coffee, serving carts, and other available items became tools of resistance. Physical proximity to the cockpit was carefully calculated, and timing was considered down to the seconds. The passengers had no guarantee of success, yet their resolve remained unshakable. As the plan solidified, passengers remained vigilant. They knew the hijackers were armed and prepared to defend the cockpit. The potential for violent retaliation was high. Nevertheless, the decision to act had been made collectively. They had accepted the reality of their fate and chosen to transform fear into purposeful action. This acceptance was central to the remarkable heroism that would define Flight 93. It is within these moments, as ordinary individuals faced extraordinary danger, that the essence of Flight 93 emerges. The passengers' courage was not born of training or profession, but of necessity, conscience, and the human instinct to protect life. Their actions were not impulsive or reckless. They were deliberate, calculated, and morally resolute. In choosing to act, the passengers embraced their responsibility in the face of unprecedented terror. This phase of the morning, the realization of the hijackers' intent, the calm and decisive planning of the passengers, and the quiet courage emerging in the cabin, sets the stage for the climactic confrontation. The story of Flight 93 is no longer just about the tragedy of a hijacked plane. It is about the extraordinary capacity of human beings to rise above fear, to organize in the face of chaos, and to act decisively to protect others, even at the cost of their own lives. The passengers' actions during these early moments exemplify the principles of leadership, courage, and sacrifice. They demonstrate that heroism is not defined by position, training, or title, but by choices made in critical moments. Each passenger, each crew member, became part of a collective effort that would ultimately prevent further destruction and transform Flight 93 into a symbol of defiance, bravery, and humanity. As the plane continued its westward trajectory, the passengers' determination solidified. Every call made, every whispered conversation, every exchanged glance contributed to the preparation for what would soon become the final act of extraordinary courage. The stage was set. The passengers were ready. The world was unaware, yet history was unfolding within the narrow confines of Flight 93. The morning of September 11, 2001, had begun like any other. But by 9:30 a.m., it had become a defining moment in human history, a moment when ordinary people became heroes, when courage triumphed over fear, and when the potential for destruction was met with an extraordinary resolve to protect life. The passengers of Flight 93 had, in a matter of minutes, shifted from stunned bystanders to determined actors in a high-stakes drama. Their understanding of the situation, sharpened by phone calls to loved ones and reports of the unfolding attacks, had galvanized a resolve that would define their final hours. Each individual processed the terror, anger, and grief in their own way, yet a common purpose began to unify them. They would not allow themselves to be instruments of further destruction. They would act. They would resist. And in doing so, they would become something far greater than the sum of their parts. The cohesion that emerged among the passengers was remarkable. Tom Burnett, drawing on his leadership qualities, coordinated discussions, and helped assess the situation. He became a central figure in the planning of the counterattack. Todd Beamer, calm and decisive, lent moral clarity, encouraging others to focus their fear into purposeful action. Mark Bingham, using his physical presence and courage, inspired confidence in those around him. Jeremy Glick's skill set and determination provided assurance that the plan could be executed despite the near-impossible odds. These individuals, along with other passengers and crew members, formed a collective that was prepared to confront the hijackers directly. Flight attendants played a crucial role during this period, bridging the gap between knowledge and action. They relayed critical information to the passengers and provided guidance where necessary, all while maintaining as much order as possible under conditions of extreme stress. Their presence was stabilizing. Even amidst chaos, they exemplified calm, competence, and courage. They were instrumental in transforming fear into organized action, demonstrating that heroism could take many forms, not just physical confrontation. The passengers' phone calls became the conduit through which the broader context of the attacks reached them. These conversations revealed the horrifying scope of the coordinated attacks, painting a picture that left little room for doubt about the hijackers' intentions. It became clear that Flight 93 was intended as a weapon aimed at a significant U.S. landmark. The urgency was overwhelming. The passengers understood that time was fleeting and that hesitation could result in unimaginable loss of life on the ground. They also understood that any action they took could very well cost them their lives. Yet the reality of the situation seemed only to strengthen their resolve. A moral imperative emerged. If they had the ability to prevent further destruction, they had to act, regardless of personal risk. This sense of responsibility, born from an understanding of the stakes, created a unique cohesion among the passengers. Each individual, regardless of prior acquaintance, became part of a unified effort that transcended personal fear. The stakes were absolute, and the response matched the gravity of the threat. During these critical moments, practical planning began to take shape. The passengers assessed the tools at their disposal: hot beverages, food carts, seat belts, and any other items that could be used as makeshift weapons. Physical abilities were considered, and roles began to emerge. Some passengers prepared to confront the hijackers directly. Others provided moral support and reassurance to those who were frightened or paralyzed by the situation. Each person had a role, and the collaborative nature of this planning reinforced the sense of shared purpose. Todd Beamer's communication with the ground operator is a particularly poignant moment in the story. While conveying the layout of the hijackers and the state of the cockpit, he demonstrated remarkable clarity and composure. The operator prayed with him, a brief moment of spiritual solace in the midst of terror. Beamer's leadership and courage were both literal and symbolic, encapsulating the extraordinary resolve that would define the passengers' actions in the final moments of the flight. His words, "Are you ready? Let's roll," would become a lasting emblem of bravery, echoing far beyond the confines of Flight 93. The passengers' growing confidence was met with escalating challenges. The hijackers, unaware of the planning and coordination occurring behind them, maintained control through threats and intimidation. The aircraft remained under their command, and the potential for violent retaliation loomed large. Yet this very threat fueled the passengers' determination. Their understanding of the consequences of inaction, both for themselves and for the larger world, cemented their resolve to act decisively. The transformation of Flight 93's passengers into a coordinated resistance force was a remarkable psychological and emotional feat. It required quick thinking, strategic planning, and the suppression of fear in the face of extreme danger. Each passenger contributed uniquely, leveraging personal strengths, previous experiences, and the courage to confront mortal peril. Their collective efforts coalesced into a plan that, while extraordinarily risky, offered the only plausible chance to prevent further disaster. In addition to planning, the passengers provided emotional support to one another. Individuals comforted the fearful, encouraged the hesitant, and reinforced the sense of purpose that united the group. The interplay of courage, empathy, and moral resolve created an environment where ordinary people were capable of extraordinary actions. The story of Flight 93 is as much about the interpersonal bonds formed under duress as it is about physical heroism. The shared understanding of the stakes, combined with mutual encouragement, allowed the passengers to overcome the paralyzing effects of terror and move toward decisive action. The logistics of the counterattack were carefully considered. Passengers identified strategic positions within the cabin, timing sequences for movement, and the tools that could be employed against the hijackers. These calculations, while executed under severe stress, demonstrated an intuitive grasp of strategy and tactical thinking. The passengers had no formal combat training, yet they approached the challenge with precision, creativity, and determination. Each step of the plan was deliberate, reflecting a conscious choice to act with intention and purpose. As the plane continued across the Pennsylvania landscape, the tension inside the cabin mounted. The hijackers remained vigilant, focused on maintaining control and aware that any disruption could jeopardize their mission. The passengers, however, were increasingly confident in their resolve. Their understanding of the risks, combined with the clarity of their objective, transformed the atmosphere from one of panic to one of focused determination. The narrative of Flight 93 is thus not simply one of tragedy, but of human capacity to confront unimaginable peril with deliberate, courageous action. This period also highlighted the significance of moral courage. The passengers' willingness to confront the hijackers, despite the near certainty of personal sacrifice, exemplifies the highest form of ethical bravery. It is a reminder that heroism is often defined not by lack of fear, but by the conscious choice to act rightly in the face of fear. Flight 93's passengers made such a choice collectively, creating a narrative that continues to inspire and resonate more than 2 decades later. The culmination of this planning, coordination, and moral resolve set the stage for the eventual confrontation with the hijackers. It marked a transition from passive victimhood to active resistance, demonstrating that even in extreme circumstances, ordinary people can exercise extraordinary agency. The passengers' actions exemplify the potential for human beings to rise to the occasion when confronted with threats that test the limits of courage, determination, and selflessness. In these moments, the passengers' humanity was fully revealed. Amid the terror, they comforted each other, spoke words of reassurance, and maintained dignity. Their choices reflected an understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the deliberate engagement with fear for a purpose greater than oneself. Every decision, every whispered instruction, and every supportive gesture contributed to the creation of a unified front capable of resisting the hijackers' lethal intentions. By the time the aircraft neared its final trajectory toward the eastern Pennsylvania countryside, the passengers had evolved into a cohesive unit, prepared to execute a plan that required extraordinary bravery. They had transformed from individuals with separate fears and concerns into a collective force united by purpose, moral conviction, and an unwavering commitment to protect life on the ground. As the passengers of Flight 93 approached the final stretch of their fateful journey, the weight of their situation was fully realized. The reality was stark. Any attempt to confront the hijackers could very well result in their deaths. Yet, they had made a conscious decision to act. The decision was not born of recklessness or impulsivity, but of a moral imperative, a recognition that inaction would almost certainly result in the deaths of countless innocent people on the ground. This awareness imbued every movement, every whispered word, and every coordinated effort with a sense of urgency and purpose. The preparation for confrontation was methodical, despite the extreme conditions. Passengers discussed who would take the lead, who would provide support, and who would manage logistics. Physical capabilities were assessed, and strategies were refined to maximize the chances of success. Improvised weapons were identified, and the timing of the collective movement toward the cockpit was carefully considered. The cabin, once a place of ordinary travel, had been transformed into a staging ground for heroism. In these moments, the passengers displayed a level of courage and ingenuity that would become the defining element of their legacy. Todd Beamer's leadership continued to resonate throughout the cabin. His calm demeanor and unwavering resolve inspired others to act decisively. Through his communication with the ground operator, he not only relayed vital information, but also reinforced the sense of collective purpose among the passengers. His words, "Are you ready? Let's roll," became both a literal and symbolic call to action. In response, each passenger embraced the responsibility of confronting the hijackers, fully aware that the odds of survival were slim. The psychological transformation of the passengers is remarkable. Fear, while present, was channeled into focus and determination. Panic was replaced by strategy. Confusion gave way to clarity. The human capacity to adapt in the face of extreme danger is exemplified in these moments, as ordinary people found extraordinary reserves of courage. Their actions were guided not by instinct alone, but by deliberate choice, a conscious understanding of the stakes, and a shared commitment to protect others. The crew played a crucial role in facilitating this transformation. Flight attendants, trained to maintain order during emergencies, acted as stabilizing forces within the cabin. They provided guidance, reassurance, and critical information. Their presence allowed the passengers to organize more effectively, ensuring that every individual had a role in the impending counterattack. The crew's leadership under extreme stress exemplified professionalism and courage, reinforcing the passengers' collective resolve. Communication continued to be a lifeline. Passengers relayed information from phone calls, piecing together the broader context of the attacks. They learned not only of the devastation at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, but also of the potential targets for Flight 93. This information clarified their mission, to prevent further destruction at all costs. Knowledge became power, and with it came the resolve to act decisively. The passengers' plan was both simple and audacious. They would storm the cockpit, confront the hijackers directly, and regain control of the aircraft. The execution of this plan required coordination, bravery, and mutual trust. Each participant understood the extreme risks involved, yet there was no hesitation. The clarity of purpose, combined with the moral imperative to act, created a unity of intent that transcended fear. Mark Bingham's physical presence and strength provided reassurance to those preparing for the confrontation. Jeremy Glick's strategic thinking and calm demeanor reinforced confidence in the plan's feasibility. Tom Burnett and Todd Beamer's leadership ensured coordination and focus. Other passengers contributed in myriad ways, offering encouragement, assisting with logistics, and maintaining morale. The cohesion of the group became a force multiplier, enabling them to act as a singular, determined unit. The impending confrontation was not only a physical challenge, but also a moral one. The passengers had to confront the reality of potentially sacrificing their lives to prevent mass destruction on the ground. This conscious engagement with mortality is a testament to the extraordinary human capacity for courage, empathy, and moral clarity. The passengers' actions highlight a fundamental truth. Heroism is defined not by the absence of fear, but by the deliberate choice to act rightly in the face of danger. As the plane neared its final approach over the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, the tension within the cabin reached its peak. The hijackers, unaware of the passengers' plans, continued to assert control through threats and intimidation. Yet the passengers' resolve remained unshaken. Their strategy, honed through careful planning and mutual trust, prepared them for the decisive moment that was about to unfold. Each passenger's role was clear. Some were prepared to physically engage the hijackers, using any available means. Others were positioned to provide support, ensuring that the plan could proceed smoothly despite the chaos. The mental discipline required to maintain focus under such extreme conditions is extraordinary. In these final moments, the passengers demonstrated remarkable resilience, courage, and clarity of purpose. The moral and emotional dimensions of the passengers' actions are profound. They comforted one another, provided encouragement, and reinforced the shared understanding of the stakes. Their bravery was both practical and symbolic, embodying the principles of courage, selflessness, and ethical action. The story of Flight 93 is thus not solely about the confrontation itself, but about the human qualities that made it possible: empathy, cooperation, moral clarity, and extraordinary courage. As the aircraft continued its trajectory, the passengers prepared for the decisive action that would define their legacy. The plan, executed with precision and determination, reflected the culmination of extraordinary human effort under extreme stress. The transformation from ordinary travelers to heroic actors was complete. They had embraced the responsibility of their circumstances, fully aware of the potential consequences, yet unwavering in their commitment to prevent further destruction. In these final preparatory moments, the passengers of Flight 93 exemplified the highest form of heroism. Their courage was not born of expectation or training, but of necessity and moral conviction. They acted collectively, strategically, and selflessly, understanding that their choices would determine the fate of countless lives on the ground. The unity, bravery, and moral clarity displayed in these moments set Flight 93 apart as a defining example of human courage in history. The morning of September 11, 2001, had begun like any other, yet by mid-morning, it had become a moment that would resonate through history. Flight 93, initially an ordinary transcontinental flight, had transformed into a stage for extraordinary human action. The passengers, guided by courage, strategy, and moral conviction, were poised to confront the hijackers. Their actions would prevent further destruction and solidify their place in history as heroes whose legacy would endure for generations. And so, the passengers prepared to act. The plan was in motion. The culmination of their courage, planning, and unity was about to be tested. The story of Flight 93 would reach its defining moment, a moment in which ordinary people would confront evil and choose, with unwavering resolve, to fight back. The passengers of Flight 93, now fully aware of the stakes, continued to prepare mentally, emotionally, and physically for the confrontation that was imminent. Their calm determination in the face of unprecedented terror is remarkable. Each second that passed increased the urgency. They knew that hesitation could cost not just their own lives, but the lives of thousands on the ground. The knowledge of this moral responsibility became the engine of their courage, driving them to act with clarity and purpose. As the plane flew over the rural Pennsylvania countryside, passengers quietly reviewed their roles and coordinated movements. Every individual had a task, whether it was to assist in the physical confrontation, maintain morale, or provide intelligence about the hijackers' positions. The sense of cohesion and collective purpose was extraordinary. Ordinary strangers had become a single unit, a team bound by a shared mission. The human instinct for survival had merged with moral resolve, creating a force capable of extraordinary action. Todd Beamer remained a central figure during these moments. His calm demeanor and unwavering focus helped to center the group. Through whispers and gestures, he communicated reassurance and strategy, ensuring that each passenger understood their role. Tom Burnett, Mark Bingham, and Jeremy Glick reinforced this cohesion, providing leadership, strength, and tactical insight. The passengers drew courage from each other, their shared determination creating a momentum that could not be stopped. The flight attendants, trained to maintain calm during emergencies, continued to serve as stabilizing forces. They comforted frightened passengers, provided guidance on practical matters, and relayed information about the hijackers' actions. Their presence allowed the passengers to focus on strategy and preparation. It is a testament to human resilience that, even under extreme stress, individuals can perform with competence, clarity, and courage. The psychological aspect of the passengers' preparation cannot be understated. They were confronting the real possibility of death while simultaneously planning to prevent further catastrophe. This dual awareness of their own mortality and of the responsibility they bore for others required an extraordinary balance of fear, courage, and moral clarity. Each passenger faced the tension of this awareness differently, but all were united by the same goal: to act decisively and protect lives on the ground. Communication continued to be vital. Phone calls with loved ones and ground operators provided crucial information about the broader context of the attacks. The passengers learned the full extent of the devastation at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and they pieced together the likely intentions for Flight 93. This information clarified their mission and strengthened their resolve. Knowledge, in this case, was both empowering and sobering. It left no room for doubt, no possibility of inaction. As they prepared for confrontation, the passengers assessed the tools and environment available to them. Everyday items, such as coffee pots, food trays, and belts, became potential tools for resistance. The narrow aisles and confined space of the aircraft were leveraged strategically, with passengers positioning themselves to maximize effectiveness. Even under extreme stress, the group demonstrated ingenuity, resourcefulness, and tactical thinking. Their preparation was deliberate, methodical, and unified. The passengers' bravery was further reinforced by a shared moral understanding that their actions, even if they resulted in death, could save countless lives on the ground. This awareness created a profound sense of purpose, a moral clarity that outweighed fear. Ordinary individuals, confronted with extraordinary circumstances, chose to act with selflessness, courage, and determination. Their actions exemplify the highest form of heroism, where conscience, morality, and courage converge. As the plane descended into the rolling hills of Somerset County, Pennsylvania, the passengers' tension reached its peak. The hijackers remained unaware of the imminent resistance, confident in their control. The contrast between the hijackers' perception and the passengers' reality underscores the extraordinary courage required to act against a clear and present danger. The moment for action was approaching, and the passengers were ready. Todd Beamer's words, whispered earlier in the cabin, "Let's roll," served as both a literal instruction and a symbol of resolve. The phrase encapsulated the moral and practical determination of the passengers. It was a signal that fear had been transformed into action, that hesitation had been replaced by courage, and that ordinary people were prepared to confront extraordinary evil. The passengers' preparation was not only physical, but deeply emotional. They comforted one another, encouraged the frightened, and reinforced each other's determination. The sense of unity and shared purpose created a psychological cohesion that would prove essential in the moments to come. This emotional support allowed the passengers to act decisively, despite the overwhelming danger. In these final moments, the passengers exemplified the best of human nature. They transformed fear into resolve, chaos into strategy, and desperation into courage. Each individual, regardless of background or profession, contributed to a collective effort that would define the legacy of Flight 93. The narrative of heroism, selflessness, and moral clarity was being written in real time, within the narrow confines of an aircraft thousands of feet above the ground. The final preparation involved positioning, coordination, and mental rehearsal. Passengers assessed the hijackers' likely movements, determined the timing of their approach, and mentally prepared for the physical confrontation that would inevitably follow. Every detail was considered, every contingency accounted for, and every passenger understood the role they would play. The meticulousness of this preparation, under such extreme circumstances, demonstrates a remarkable level of clarity and courage. The passengers' actions illustrate the extraordinary capacity for moral courage in the face of mortal danger. They chose to act, fully aware of the potential consequences, because it was the right thing to do. Their courage was not reckless but deliberate, grounded in ethical understanding and a sense of responsibility to others. It is this moral clarity, combined with strategic action, that defines the legacy of Flight 93. As the plane continued its descent, the passengers' unity and preparation reached their culmination. They were poised for action, ready to confront the hijackers and prevent further devastation. The stage was set for the climactic moments that would forever define their courage and selflessness. Ordinary people, bound by a shared mission, were about to perform extraordinary acts of bravery. The story of Flight 93, at this stage, exemplifies the transformative power of purpose, courage, and moral clarity. The passengers' willingness to act in the face of almost certain death, their strategic coordination, and their emotional resilience combined to create a narrative of heroism unparalleled in modern history. The events that would unfold next would cement their legacy and offer an enduring lesson in human bravery and selflessness. The passengers of Flight 93 were now fully prepared, mentally, emotionally, and physically, to face the hijackers. Every detail of their plan had been discussed, every role assigned, and every potential obstacle considered. They understood the magnitude of what they were about to do, not merely as a struggle for their own survival, but as an act to protect countless innocent lives on the ground. This understanding created a resolve that transcended fear, forging ordinary people into a unified force ready to confront extraordinary evil. The physical layout of the cabin had been strategically assessed. Passengers had positioned themselves near the cockpit, where the hijackers had locked themselves in, ensuring that they could act simultaneously and effectively. Everyday objects, coffee pots, food trays, fire extinguishers, were identified as potential tools in the effort to breach the cockpit and subdue the hijackers. Each individual prepared to leverage their personal strengths, whether physical, strategic, or moral, to maximize the chances of success. Todd Beamer's leadership and composure continued to guide the group. His calm, deliberate demeanor reinforced the passengers' collective confidence. Beamer's communication with the ground operator not only provided critical information, but also served as an emotional anchor, grounding the passengers' resolve. His whispered words, "Let's roll," symbolized the culmination of their preparation and the transition from planning to decisive action. The hijackers, confident in their control, remained unaware of the passengers' intentions. Their threats and movements were designed to intimidate, but the passengers' fear had been transformed into focused determination. They were prepared not only to confront the hijackers physically, but to do so with the understanding that their actions could save thousands of lives. This awareness created a powerful moral imperative, motivating each individual to act decisively, despite the near certainty of personal sacrifice. In these final moments, the passengers exhibited extraordinary psychological resilience. They balanced the terror of confronting armed hijackers with the clarity of purpose derived from their moral and strategic reasoning. Emotional support within the cabin played a crucial role. Passengers comforted one another, reinforced confidence, and maintained a sense of collective determination. This psychological cohesion was as essential as any physical preparation, allowing them to act as a single, coordinated unit. Mark Bingham, Jeremy Glick, Tom Burnett, and Todd Beamer became the pillars of this coordinated effort. Bingham's physical presence provided assurance and leadership, while Glick's strategic thinking helped refine the plan. Burnett's organizational skills and calm determination kept the group focused, and Beamer's moral clarity inspired courage. Each passenger contributed uniquely, reinforcing the idea that heroism can be collective, emerging from the collaboration of individuals united by purpose. The role of the flight attendants remained vital. They helped maintain order, relayed information, and supported passengers emotionally and practically. Their calm professionalism allowed the passengers to focus on executing their plan. In these moments, the synergy between crew and passengers exemplified the extraordinary capacity for coordinated action in the face of imminent danger. The mental preparation of the passengers was deeply intertwined with their moral resolve. They were acutely aware that their actions could cost them their lives, yet they embraced this reality because inaction would result in the deaths of countless others. This moral courage, the deliberate choice to act rightly despite extreme risk, underscores the extraordinary human qualities exhibited on Flight 93. As the aircraft descended over rural Pennsylvania, the passengers' coordination reached its final stage. They had mentally rehearsed the confrontation, assessed the hijackers' likely responses, and synchronized their movements. The narrow aisles and confined cabin space were leveraged strategically, allowing them to approach the cockpit from multiple angles simultaneously. Every passenger was aware that the success of the plan depended on collective action, precision, and courage. Todd Beamer's "Let's roll" became the internal signal for the final movement. It was not merely a phrase, but a manifestation of resolve, courage, and unity. At that moment, fear was transformed into action. Each passenger embraced their role, ready to confront armed hijackers with the tools and strategy at their disposal. The ordinary had become extraordinary. The passengers were poised to act in a way that would alter the course of history. The physical confrontation that was about to occur required extraordinary bravery. The passengers were facing armed hijackers in a confined space, with little chance of surviving the encounter. Yet their preparation, coordination, and moral resolve enabled them to act decisively. Each movement was deliberate, every gesture calculated to maximize the likelihood of success. This combination of courage, strategy, and moral clarity exemplifies the essence of heroism in extreme circumstances. The psychological pressure intensified as the moment approached. Passengers were acutely aware of the risks, yet they were not paralyzed by fear. Instead, their fear had been transformed into focus, determination, and a willingness to act. This transformation reflects the remarkable capacity of human beings to respond effectively under extreme stress, particularly when guided by moral purpose and collective cohesion. Communication remained vital in these final moments. Passengers whispered instructions, reassured one another, and coordinated their actions. The crew provided guidance, reinforced morale, and maintained situational awareness. The passengers' ability to execute a complex plan under extreme conditions demonstrates extraordinary resilience, leadership, and courage. The impending confrontation was both a physical and moral challenge. The passengers had to confront armed hijackers, risking their lives to prevent further catastrophe. Their actions required not only physical bravery, but also moral clarity, the ability to act decisively despite the awareness of near-certain death. This combination of courage and moral resolve is what defines the heroism of Flight 93. As the aircraft descended toward its final trajectory over the Pennsylvania countryside, the passengers' preparation, coordination, and determination reached their culmination. They were ready to execute their plan, fully aware of the consequences. Every passenger understood the stakes and embraced their role with unwavering resolve. Their courage, moral clarity, and unity exemplify the highest ideals of human behavior under extreme conditions. The story of Flight 93 at this stage highlights the extraordinary capacity of ordinary people to confront evil with courage, strategy, and moral resolve. The passengers' actions demonstrate that heroism is not reserved for trained professionals or those in positions of authority, but can emerge from ordinary individuals faced with extraordinary circumstances. Their decision to act, despite near-certain danger, reflects a profound commitment to protecting others and upholding moral responsibility. As the final moments approached, the passengers' actions were a testament to the human capacity for courage, resilience, and selflessness. Their preparation, strategic planning, and moral clarity transformed fear into decisive action. The legacy of Flight 93 is not only the story of a heroic confrontation, but also a powerful example of the capacity of human beings to rise above fear, act with purpose, and make choices that reflect the highest ideals of courage and morality. The aircraft continued its descent, the tension building with each passing second. The passengers' coordinated movements, mental preparation, and emotional resilience set the stage for the climactic confrontation that would define their legacy. They had embraced their roles, fully aware of the risks, and were prepared to act decisively. The moment of confrontation was imminent, and history was about to witness the extraordinary courage of Flight 93's passengers. The moment had arrived. The passengers of Flight 93, ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, were prepared to confront the hijackers. Fear was present, but it had been transformed into resolve. Every movement, every whispered word, every coordinated action reflected the culmination of courage, strategy, and moral clarity. The ordinary individuals on board were about to act in a way that would echo through history. Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, Jeremy Glick, and others had positioned themselves near the cockpit, ready to act. Their timing had to be precise. Any hesitation could allow the hijackers to retaliate violently. The plan was simple in concept but extraordinarily complex in execution. Storm the cockpit, overwhelm the hijackers, and attempt to regain control of the aircraft. Every passenger understood the stakes, and every individual was prepared to sacrifice their own life to prevent greater catastrophe. The passengers surged forward, a coordinated wave of determination and bravery. They used every tool at their disposal, makeshift weapons, physical strength, and psychological resolve, to confront the hijackers. The confined space of the cabin, once a source of vulnerability, became an arena in which their collective courage could be maximized. The struggle was intense, chaotic, and desperate, yet it was executed with purpose and unity. Each passenger contributed in a way that reflected their unique abilities. Physical strength was leveraged to gain access to the cockpit. Strategic thinking was used to anticipate the hijackers' movements and coordinate actions. Moral courage provided the unwavering resolve necessary to face almost certain death. The interplay of these qualities transformed ordinary travelers into heroic actors, capable of confronting extraordinary evil. The hijackers fought to maintain control, but the passengers' collective effort was relentless. The struggle within the narrow aisles of the aircraft demonstrated the extraordinary human capacity for courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice. Every action taken by the passengers was guided by the knowledge that their intervention could prevent further destruction on the ground. This moral imperative infused their efforts with a determination that surpassed fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty. Todd Beamer's leadership and example continued to inspire those around him. His words, earlier spoken with calm resolve, had become a rallying cry for the passengers. Let's roll. The phrase encapsulated their courage, unity, and moral clarity, signaling that fear had been transformed into decisive action. Every passenger's contribution, whether in direct physical engagement or supportive coordination, reinforced the shared mission. The aircraft shook violently as the struggle intensified. Passengers and hijackers alike grappled in the confined space, the cacophony of shouts, movement, and collision filling the cabin. Despite the chaos, the passengers maintained focus, driven by the knowledge that their actions could prevent disaster for thousands on the ground. Their bravery was both practical and symbolic, embodying the human capacity to confront evil with determination, courage, and selflessness. Flight attendants continued to play a vital role even in these final moments, offering guidance, reassurance, and support where possible. Their presence reinforced the passengers' unity and contributed to the organized resistance. The coordination between crew and passengers exemplifies extraordinary human resilience under extreme circumstances, demonstrating that courage is amplified when individuals act together in pursuit of a moral purpose. The struggle reached its climactic moment. Passengers fought with everything they had, drawing upon every reserve of strength, courage, and resolve. The hijackers' control was challenged, and the balance of power shifted in the passengers' favor. The cockpit, the focal point of the hijackers' plan, became the arena in which the passengers' heroism was fully realized. Every action, every movement, and every act of bravery was directed toward a singular goal: to prevent further devastation. In these final moments, the passengers demonstrated extraordinary moral clarity. They understood the risk of death and accepted it as the price of saving others. This conscious choice, made under conditions of extreme stress and imminent danger, highlights the profound ethical courage of Flight 93's passengers. Their actions exemplify the highest ideals of selflessness, bravery, and moral responsibility. As the struggle unfolded, the passengers' unity and determination prevented the hijackers from executing their intended attack. Though the aircraft ultimately crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the passengers' actions ensured that their intended target, likely a significant U.S. landmark, was spared from destruction. Their sacrifice saved countless lives and prevented further tragedy, transforming the outcome of an otherwise catastrophic day. The crash was devastating, yet it stands as a testament to the passengers' extraordinary heroism. Ordinary people, united by a shared mission and guided by courage and moral clarity, were able to thwart a catastrophic plan at the cost of their own lives. Their actions embody the essence of selfless bravery and serve as a lasting reminder of the power of human agency, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. The legacy of Flight 93 extends far beyond the physical events of that day. The passengers' courage, ingenuity, and moral resolve continue to inspire generations, illustrating the capacity for ordinary individuals to perform extraordinary acts when faced with impossible circumstances. Their story serves as a timeless example of ethical heroism, resilience, and collective action under extreme stress. Flight 93's passengers are remembered not only for their bravery, but for the unity and purpose that defined their final moments. Each individual, regardless of age, background, or profession, contributed to a collective effort that changed the course of history. Their actions reflect the highest ideals of human courage, demonstrating that in moments of moral and physical crisis, ordinary people are capable of extraordinary heroism. The events of September 11, 2001, revealed both the depths of human cruelty and the heights of human courage. Flight 93 stands as a testament to the latter, a symbol of hope, sacrifice, and moral resolve. The passengers' deliberate choice to confront danger, to act decisively in the face of almost certain death, defines the enduring lesson of Flight 93, that courage, unity, and moral clarity can triumph over fear, even in the darkest of circumstances. Today, memorials and stories honor the passengers of Flight 93, ensuring that their bravery and sacrifice are never forgotten. Their actions continue to inspire, reminding us that ordinary individuals, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, can rise to heroic heights. The story of Flight 93 is a timeless narrative of courage, moral resolve, and the power of collective action, echoing across history as a testament to the extraordinary potential of the human spirit. In the end, Flight 93 was not merely a tragedy, but a story of extraordinary heroism. The passengers' courageous and selfless actions transformed a day of terror into a moment of moral triumph. Their legacy endures, a reminder that in the face of unimaginable adversity, ordinary people can rise to act with extraordinary courage, determination, and moral clarity. The story of Flight 93, of those who fought back, stands as one of the defining examples of human bravery in modern history.